Hey guys, it's M. And I'm sure you've noticed recently, I haven't posted many, if any, LR videos. And it's because I momentarily deleted it. Now, there's a few reasons. Falling behind in meta because I didn't play the game for a few months, it eating up editing space on my phone, yada yada. But one of my biggest peeves with the game, especially recently, has got to be the character choice. I don't know if it's just me, but seeing these characters repeated and rewatched over and over again oftentimes just rubs me the wrong way entirely. It's not an issue for me if it's someone like Ken who's got multiple techniques to make units off of, but then you get someone like Souther who's done the same funk-ass Phoenix move 4 or 5 times at this point. Or Juza who, while I love bro, let's be real, homie's strongest move they keep animating is him warming up his hands and shoving. But MHK isn't as long as I can't read. But MHK isn't as long as some manga like DBZ or something with all these throwaway characters. Do you want the characters they've released already to completely fall off the meta? Do you just hate fan favorites? No, but we've gotten to the point where I'd love to see some original moves instead of the same references over and over again. I don't really have much hype for seeing a lot of these characters as STs nowadays, and by extension, them, as that's most of their selling power for me. As while they do look nice, it feels for me they ran out of real content for them a while ago. I mentioned Souther earlier, but it's a problem that pretty much gripped all of the Nantos, including the Chariots at this point. It's not like they've never made up moves before with units like Shin and Jaggy or Ryan and Bat. It's clear they can be trusted with these characters either by themselves or with their current supervision, so I'd love to see more creative attacks for these fan favorites instead of Raid Flip, Souther Phoenix Flip, Juza Hothead. Another problem is the variant issue. We've got variants on the table that have never gotten units, but instead we've gotten repeats of the same time period. We've gotten multiple Jaggies over the years, and again, while I do love him obviously, and his design, do we have a helmetless Jaggy yet? Past with no wires or even present with wires? No? Do we have a Kumite era Souther or a flashback Amoeba? No? Do we have an Asura Batarin? No? If you're not a Hucto bro or fucking Fudo for some reason, it feels like we've just got people sitting in stagnant water that if you've only played this game, you'd assume they only ever did one thing. This is a point we're gonna come back to, so just keep it in your holster. The first 2 points of them not creating new things or just repeating the same variants of units are lesser issues to me. To this next bigger issue, we keep fucking edging around post-Asura, and it's actively driving me insane. I can understand doing 8,000 variants if we at least covered the main story already, but we haven't even done that yet. I get HNK 1 to Asura is the popular for years. I get HNK 1 to Asura is the popular chunk of the show, but we should have gotten past that point out of the way at least. It's gotten to the point where if you've been following the main quest after 5 years, they've been pushed into a position where they can't shove it away like they seemingly have been for much longer. Well, clearly they were waiting until they got to that point naturally with the quests. Oh, like how they did with the first Kyohan or Kaio, right? Like how they did with all of those Asura scrotes? The HNK property as a whole treats Baron, Ryu, and Assam like some sort of infectious rot that could ruin the franchise if they ever touch them again. When in reality, it has a bunch of fun URs on the table. Baron and Assam in particular have potential for some really cool STs, as Assam's fighting style wasn't super well developed, so it'd be nice to see it animated with the current LR budget. Baron in theory can do what the Hucto bros can, so aside from the obvious Rao Beam ST, I feel like there's some fun wiggle room around him. You're so stupid. Clearly they only do the hype characters. It's clearly popularity. So you're telling me, instead of finishing the story units, they'd rather give us fucking Shazam or Alf units? 2 people nobody would have lost sleep over if they weren't in the game? What are you gonna tell me next? We should get Krabby and the long guy who beats up Yo first just to finish up Asura? Maybe sprinkle the fucking Boros in? It's the most irking aspect of the units in recent years, as I gotta watch Fudo 12 or Ogai 13 come out. Meanwhile, Baron's been forgotten and living in a cardboard box for literally years when it comes to content. Now, let's talk about the other egregious aspect of LR's units as of late. These crossovers. Holy fuck, they suck dog ass. They initially started off strong, giving us Virtua Fighter, Sonic the fucking Hedgehog, Baki, Ryu and the Street Fighter gang, Tekken, and all these things. It was hype to see these other IP properties duke it out with HNK characters. We got some insane visuals from them, like Sonic fighting Rao, and Bison fighting Kyle, Ryu versus Kenshiro. It was awesome. Then, I guess the budget ran out or they fucking deflated, because we've been getting stinkers damn near back to back. I'd bring up the non-horror associated IPs we've got as of late, if we fucking had any, but we haven't. Other than the ones I mentioned, which were years ago at this point, nope. just none at all. The hype visuals of seeing other versed characters against HNK, pretty much gone, and I don't hold much hope for anytime soon, honestly. I remember people getting shit on for saying they wanted JoJo or Yakuza crossovers, but tell me that wouldn't be more exciting than any units that have come out in the last, like, 2 years. I don't even really get why those people were getting shit on for asking for that in the first place. Because they asked for something they wanted instead of being content with the 4th SNK crossover? Speaking of which, the other Hara or HNK property crossovers are the definition of misery incarnate, honestly. When the Garuda Gaiden crossover dropped, I'm sure you remember I clowned on him for his OC design and Gary Stu braindead plot. But unfortunately, very unfortunately, this ended up being one of the better crossovers we got, as they didn't milk him dry from every orifice. Before I get to the putrid and fetid ones, let's talk about Keiji. I don't have any real beef with Keiji, to be honest. The characters seem fine and charming enough in their own story. However, I have literally zero interest in seeing them fight any of the HNK cast. It's not like Sonic where it's so absurd it's entertaining, Street Fighter or Tekken where you could argue those guys could be on tier with HNK characters if not higher. Keiji just has a bunch of swords. I don't really get hyped seeing them do anything because for the most part, they don't do anything special. Every time I saw a crossover coming out for them, it'd be met with me comfortably getting under the covers and going to sleep for the night. I feel if those units weren't meta as they often tended to be, the LR player base would feel mostly the same. But let's talk about the putrid one now. Ray Gaiden. I genuinely don't know how we live in a world with Jaggy Gaiden, Juice Gaiden, fuck all of TNH, but somehow, we got two Ray Gaiden crossovers. You know, genuinely one of the worst Gaidens, point blank period, has gotten character slots over Jaggy Gaiden or TNH. Who even wants these characters? Ray, sure, at least he's a fan favorite. Not this rendition of him, but in general he's loved. The others? If we're talking about the first wave, you got Rima, which while his design's neat, there's one panel that's so bad I can't show it to you, and Frida, who won no fights and tried to smash Ray the moment he walked into town. The two were visually nice, I suppose, but I don't know anyone who was fiending for this lineup. Then we get to the second wave, to which we got Ray, again, alongside Rufu the Incel and Rinri. Rima and Frida I can understand as they had some drip, despite being awful and flat characters. But Rufu and Rinri? Rufu's entire plot was that he hates women for some reason and that he killed his wife. Visually, he's just Kaio but with less flashy moves. Rinri had to be a stretch to reach a character goal. She had to be, because she's not even really in the story. She's a flashback character who died before it even started. So other than being the first Nanta lady in the game, she's a nothing burger slapped in to hit a quota. Unironically, and I know I'm gonna get shit for this, but I don't care, Karen from the one chapter prequel spinoff would have been a way more interesting character visually and moveset wise than Rinri here is. Then we get to the fully squeezed, exhausted, and panting on its knees property, SNK. My feelings about SNK are pretty well known, and I can't say I get excited when seeing them get announced. But I'm not gonna lie, we have got some cool units off of them. Like I said in the main story, the concepts themselves are pretty good. And in a game without 8 pages of talking, it feels like a lot of characters just got to be cool. The Kazumi units tend to be pretty sick. While the first one had a boring fist rush, the next rendition with Soryu has one of my top 10 STs in the game. Boltzong's stand move pretty sure is what made me want to read SNK in the first place. Even Mang, a character I think is pretty dookie all things considered, had a cool ST. I think they started off strong, then started making weird choices. For instance, Kazumi, Zong, Taeyun, and the other main heroes and villains, I understand. I don't really love or care for all of them, but if there was a crossover, I understand why you'd pick them. Then we get to the odd picks like either of the Pans. Don't hate them, but I could have lived without them. Then we get into the blindfold names in a hat category. Teshin and Yama immediately come to mind. Teshin is a character that literally actually does nothing and only gets 2 or so cutaways in the entire book. Yama is egregious. Yama is like if Kim from Base HNK got a unit. She's a flashback character who doesn't do anything except give Yasuka a pep talk. And now you may be thinking, hey Em, you left a specific character out. Yes I did, dear viewer, because he's the one who made me want to make this video. We got fucking Shuken. The only reason he'd have any appeal at all is the same as Teshin. Holy shit, he's a successor! After you get over that, we have a guy who did nothing except be flashback fuel stuffed at the back end of a random arc that didn't need to be there. Despite my general eye-rolling boredom when I initially saw him, I was ready to give him a chance with his ST. And aside from all the pretty colors they flash in your face, it ended up just being a really stiff 100 fist rush where he barely moves his upper torso with the strikes. I don't even know what else to say about him other than he's there, and I know nobody asked for him. Overall, as I'm sure it comes across, I'm just kind of bored of the units we've got recently. KG and SNK characters I have no real interest in. The cool crossovers seem to be over for the most part. Seeing the same characters repeated ad nauseum while others are just rotting, I just feel meh about it at this point. A big draw for LR for me, at least at the beginning, was watching my favorite characters do what-if fights. But at this point, I feel we've seen most of those cool what-ifs repeated over and over again. And what doesn't help is often the same faves end up being the top tiers you see everywhere. So even if you like some of the lesser loved characters and pull them, they might end up just being useless or end up useless in a week. Don't get me wrong, we'll have some wacky people slip through the cracks like Shin or Juza every once in a while. But how many metas have we had where it's just the Hucto Bros, excluding Jaggy most of the time, or just the Asura bunch? I'm not saying the game's fully lost me in this regard, as if we get some later H&K characters, a Regenesis or just a cool crossover overall, I'd probably check in at the very least. But as is, this has kind of been a mounting issue I've had. I could really tell it was bugging me when I wasn't even excited for the new Falco. But anyways, I've been babbling long enough. As always, as long as you're respectful, I'm glad to discuss with you in the comments, and I've been M, and I am out.